the Mannequin district. Tonight's story begins in a part of the city where the windows are never empty, and the mannequins do more than pose. Tonight's story is about patience, observation, and what happens when the living are measured by the silent. Let's begin. The older quarters of the city narrowed into corridors of perpetual shadow, where buildings leaned inward as if straining to listen to whispered secrets. Street lamps burned yellow and weak, the light never reaching the cracked, uneven pavement that clung damply to my shoes. I walked alone, the darkness crawling over my ankles like cold, damp fabric, corridors twisting in impossible ways I had never noticed before. Every display window held a solitary figure, posture perfect, faces smooth and blank, staring into nothing while measuring my movement through the glass. I came here not by choice, but by exhaustion, the slow erosion of opportunity leaving only these streets and their patient observers. The first mannequin wore a suit, gray as ash, brittle and stained, yet shoulders square, hands straight. Head tilted just enough to convey expectation. Its face was an oval of porcelain, smoothed away, yet somehow expressing the faintest hint of cruel amusement at my hesitation. I stopped. I felt watched. Mannequin waited with calm certainty, as though it already knew how my day would end. Turning away, the streets shifted subtly. Buildings leaned closer. Shadows deepened. Pavement uneven. The air carrying varnish and old cloth in a slow, crawling scent. Further along, other mannequins appeared, hurt, each in costumes from lives I did not know. Wedding dresses yellowed, school uniforms sagging, doctors' coats with stethoscopes draped like nooses. I entered a shop whose door was slightly ajar. A tired chime sounded, and the air thickened with dust, formaldehyde, and something older. Shelves held smaller figures, infants frozen mid-cry, businessmen in miniature suits, lovers locked in mid-embrace, all staring into mid-distance, as if listening to a private conversation with the ceiling. Behind the counter stood a larger mannequin, dressed as a tailor, measuring tape over its shoulders, pins in its cuffs, its face replaced with smooth mirror glass. The reflection showed me older, wearier eyes, too wide, its mouth set in a line that could have been despair or amusement at my intrusion. I moved. The reflection moved too, but slower, reluctant, as if considering whether I was worth copying at all. I spoke, and my words felt fragile. "Is anyone here?" The mirror remained silent, yet I felt acknowledged, catalogued, like a specimen under inspection. I stepped back into the street. Mannequins now outnumbered the living, standing alone, in groups, facing outward, heads tilting faintly to track me wherever I moved. I realized I had been walking in a circle. The same shop reappeared, the same tailor behind the counter, reflection younger this time, expression uncertain. I entered again. The bell did not chime, air colder, shelves rearranged, the small mannequins subtly turning their heads as though they were learning to recognize me. Lines began forming on their blank faces, curiosity, recognition, resignation. Tiny signs of comprehension that made the air feel heavy with attention. The tailor's mirrored face tilted. The measuring tape slid from its shoulders like a silent serpent, extending toward me with ritualistic precision. It touched my wrist, cold, dry, like paper left in the dark too long, sending a shiver through my spine that refused to fade. It measured shoulder to wrist, neck to waist, inseam, each taken with exacting care, as though cataloging dimensions for a suit never worn by anyone alive. When finished, it lowered the tape. In the mirror behind me, the shelves were empty, the smaller mannequins gone, replaced by figures wearing my coat, my posture, my expression. I turned. The shop was empty, door closed, outside darker than before. Street lamps dimmer, shadows long and oppressive, the air vibrating faintly. The mannequins in the windows had turned their heads toward me, blank faces, now wearing my expression from when I first entered, as if mocking my hope for escape. I walked on, compelled, the corridor narrowing, buildings leaning closer. The city swallowing me in its silent, measured embrace. Somewhere behind me, the soft sound of the measuring tape rolled out, then rolled back again, the only applause in a theater of stillness. I knew then there was no end to the district, only waiting, measuring, low, and the slow replacement of the living by those who have mastered stillness. The faces growing from the walls. Tonight's story begins with walls that breathe and watch, with faces that smile before you understand why. Tonight's story is about the way reality can bend and the way it can stare. Let's begin. I entered the room, expecting dust, silence, and the faint stink of mildew. Instead, the walls were covered with pale, wet faces. At first, I thought it was paint, smeared in grotesque mockery of expressions, but the eyes moved slightly when I blinked. A low hum rose beneath the floor, vibrating through my shoes and legs, syncing with my heartbeat in a slow, deliberate rhythm. I reached for the nearest wall. Skin, warm and pliable, gave under my fingers, pulsing as if breathing. The faces whispered my name softly, 100 times over, blending syllables I did not know I remembered. One face parted its lips. A voice emerged, familiar and alien, echoing across the ceiling and back into my chest. I stumbled backward. The room seemed to elongate, walls stretching impossibly, angles bending like paper folded in impossible origami. The faces multiplied, emerging in the corners. From ceiling beams, even the floor, blank expressions twisting into subtle smiles. A hand-like protrusion emerged from one wall, pale, thin, curling toward my shoulder as if inviting touch. I recoiled. Tick. It recoiled back, stretching impossibly, knuckles cracking in impossible directions. The hum grew louder, a mechanical, organic vibration, as if the building itself were alive and feeding on my attention. I turned to leave. The door was no longer there, replaced by a wall crawling with new faces, each observing, judging, waiting. One face matched mine exactly, except the eyes were too wide, teeth sharper, skin shimmering faintly as if wet under fluorescent light. I felt something pressed from behind my spine, like tiny hands digging into my muscles, rearranging me in preparation. As the floor beneath me sagged, creating a small dip that seemed to pulse with anticipation, carrying whispers along its length. Its skin was cold, slick, and moved independently from the wall, the features flexing like living clay. A shadow detached from the far corner, twisting, stretching toward me with movement both liquid and rigid simultaneously. I screamed. The faces echoed it, mimicking my tone, layering hundreds of screams into one monstrous chorus. But the ceiling bent downward. I could see faces peering from the plaster above, eyes blinking asynchronously, observing in perfect stillness. The hand from the wall grasped my arm. Pressure increased, pulling me closer to the plastered faces. I tried to run. The floor shifted beneath me, tilting, walls bending inward to guide me toward a corner where more faces waited. The shadow fell across me, face pressed against my cheek, smiling, teeth sharp, eyes luminous with faint red light. I felt the wall absorb part of my body, fingers entwining with the plaster, skin merging with theirs. Whisper curled around my ear. You belong here. We are you. You are us. I looked down. Our faces had sprouted along my arms, shoulders, each mimicking mine, each pressing outward as if claiming space. The room vibrated violently, faces stretching, merging, splitting, forming grotesque tableaux across every surface. My reflection in a broken mirror showed 100 versions of me, each with slight variations, all observing, all patient. I fell to my knees. The walls pressed closer, faces leaning, mouths forming words I could not hear but understood. The shadow merged with me. My vision blurred, sound distorted, body rearranged into something no longer entirely human. A time slowed, cooed, synchronized with the pulse of faces pressing against, emerging, forming a living tapestry of my own form. And then I understood. The walls did not consume me. It merely waited for me to recognize that I had always been theirs. The corridor that ate my name. Tonight's story begins in a place where letters vanish, and names do not belong to those who claim them, okay? Tonight's story is about what happens when the city itself decides you are not yourself. Let's begin. I woke in the corridor I did not remember entering, walls stretching too high, shadows pooling like thick ink across the floor. Each step echoed unnaturally, bouncing back names whispered in voices too familiar to mine, though I had never spoken them aloud. The tiles beneath me were uneven, shifting subtly as though breathing, curving upward at impossible angles toward a ceiling that didn't exist. Doors lined the walls, each identical, none opening, handles turning as if pretending to obey, while the keyholes stared like empty eyes. I tried to call out, voice swallowed by the corridor's length, returning only faint, warped repetitions of my own syllables. A flicker of light revealed letters carved into the walls, half-formed, fading as I approached, spelling my name with each step. I reached toward the letters. They shimmered, curling away from my fingers like smoke, unwilling to be touched. A draft carried whispers, low and wet, spelling my name in every tongue I had never learned, every accent I had never heard. The floor vibrated faintly, like a heartbeat, one I had never possessed, syncing with the names recited behind my eyes. I turned, expecting the corridor to end, but it stretched further, folding over itself, a Mobius strip of brick and shadow. An old sign dangled above one door. Exit, letters peeling, paint crawling in slow, liquid movement toward me. I opened the door. Stairwell descended into darkness, steps creaking under a weight I did not feel, stairs too steep, too narrow. At the bottom, the hallway split into dozens of corridors, each identical, all twisting impossibly, all spelling my name across their walls. I glimpsed figures at the corners, faceless, bending unnaturally, their limbs too long, movement too precise, synchronized with my heartbeat. One reached toward me, arm bending in a way that should have broken it, fingertips brushing my shoulder with icy patience. Tease. I recoiled. The letters on the walls rearranged instantly, spelling new warnings. Do not leave. Do not forget. The air thickened. Each breath drew in dust, decay, the faintest metallic temps of blood that wasn't mine, yet I tasted it. A corridor to the left twisted upward. I followed, compelled by a force I could not resist, walls leaning inward, breathing with low, rasping sighs. I saw my reflection in the cracked glass of a hanging frame, face younger, older, distorted in ways I could not reconcile. The reflection smiled first, lips peeling back to wide, eyes stretching beyond normal limits, shadows pooling beneath them. A soft scratching sounded behind me, something moving along the walls, following my name, rearranging letters as I walked. Oops. Each step forward pulled me deeper into impossibility. The ceiling folded over itself, walls bent in directions that should have been structurally catastrophic. I realized my own footsteps were echoed by dozens of phantom feet, matching perfectly, yet none of them mine. A faint chime sounded from nowhere, metal striking metal. The echo spelling forget, again and again, a rhythm matching my pulse. I reached for a door. It opened inward to reveal a single chair, empty, but with my name etched across the back in wet black ink, Laissez, and the corridor froze. The letters halted, shadows suspended, the silence thick and expectant. A whisper breathed from the walls. You are here because you exist. You exist because we remembered your name. I could not leave, could not forget, could not reclaim what the corridor had claimed long before I arrived. The walls began shifting again, letters spelling new names, new versions of me, each version waiting, watching, patient. I understood then, the corridor did not eat me. It had only always existed from my absence, cataloging each forgotten syllable, each unclaimed letter. I exhaled. My name echoed back at me, warped, unrecognizable, carried down infinite halls that led nowhere and everywhere. And as I tried to stand, the corridor whispered one last promise. You will never leave. You will only remember. I found a training video starring me. I've never worked here before. Tonight's story begins in a building no one should be in. The kind of place that waits for you before you even arrive. If you've ever felt unseen eyes in an empty office, this one is for you. Let's begin. This building looked abandoned when I arrived, but the lobby lights flickered as if they had been waiting just for me. I didn't remember applying for the overnight data entry position, but the email insisted I start at 11 p.m. The elevator doors opened on their own, humming like a mechanical throat ready to swallow me whole. Floor 3 smelled of new carpet and overheated electronics. Cubicles stretching farther than the building's exterior should allow. My cubicle had a folder with my name printed perfectly on the tab, middle initial included. I never gave that. The folder contained a single sheet reading, "Welcome back," in a font too clean to be human. A CRT monitor in the corner was already playing a paused video of a man sitting at a desk. He was exhausted, looked exactly like me, slouched slightly, eyes too steady, shoulders oddly tense. The timestamp blinked, 2:17 a.m., tomorrow. The man leaned forward as if he already knew I had arrived. "Welcome back," the voice said, calm, precise, and unmistakably mine, but smoother than I've ever sounded. I hadn't even filled out paperwork, yet he referred to previous shifts I had never experienced. The cubicles faded into shadows, making the office feel impossibly deep, as if I had stepped into another layer of reality. The camera angle shifted slightly in the video, like someone invisible had moved behind him to observe. Memory retention improves after integration, VideoMe said, smiling just enough to feel rehearsed rather than human. The folder felt heavier when I picked it up. Inside were still frames from the video showing me at this desk. The timestamps varied, some months ahead, some years in the future. My hair grayer, shoulders unnaturally raised, fluorescent lights flickered in perfect sync with the video. Electrical hum buzzing under my skin like a nervous pulse. VideoMe stood up, his posture bent subtly backward, as if strings invisible beneath his skin were adjusting his form. "You were selected for flexibility," he said, voice soft, almost a suggestion, as if I might obey without choice. In the far corner, a cubicle light flickered on, then another. One by one, empty chairs glowed with blue monitors. Every screen displayed a paused frame of me. Different times, different nights, all unblinking, all waiting. The elevator dinged behind me. Footsteps approached slowly, measured, identical to the rhythm of my own heartbeat. VideoMe leaned closer to the camera, tilting his head as if listening to sounds I could not perceive. The ceiling above my desk bowed downward, dust falling, a weight pressing that shouldn't exist in this world. The badge on my desk vibrated, a tiny pulse, displaying my photo and employee ID, practiced and precise, unfamiliar. The CRT reflected a version of me standing behind me. Eyes open, shoulders too high, body stretched like a puppet. One monitor flickered to live footage of the lobby. A man in my jacket entered, walking exactly like I do. The time stamp read 11 minutes earlier. I wasn't the first tonight. I had never been alone here. You know me filled the CRT, jaw twitching, skin subtly shifting, like something beneath it was alive and adjusting to me. The ceiling tile tore completely free. A body dropped halfway through, suspended by hooks embedded in its spine. Integration is smoother when you cooperate, he said, voice calm, footsteps halting behind me, mirrored, waiting. The cursor blinked on the login screen, already filled, password entered. Enter or be replaced. I pressed it,